I was saying to y'all, it's your boy Rico from StreetScores, and y'all said y'all wanted a name change, right? Well, how about the Washington Red Zoners? Because that's what y'all asked for clearly on that game, man. And yeah, man, there are a lot of negatives to take away from this game, of course, but I also feel like, man, there are a lot of positives to take away from this game, especially from a team that's building towards the future. I mean, Austin CYBORG went 7 for 7. I'm calling him Austin CYBORG instead of CYBERT because that man is automatic like a robot. And of course, we got to break down everything that happened in that Washington Commanders versus New York Giants win. We're going to review and analyze everything. Jayden Daniels looks like the guy. I'm telling you right now. Our running backs are explosive. Of course, we're going to do a position group by position group dive. We're going to talk about coaching, Cliff Kingsbury, Joe Witt Jr., their decision making and things like that. We're going to dive into the quarterbacks, the running backs, the wide receivers, tight ends, offensive line, defensive line, linebackers, corners, safety, special teams especially as well. So make sure you stay tuned throughout the entire video. But before we dive into all of that, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned. I will keep y'all updated on everything Commanders all throughout the week, and I'm live streaming every game that we play. So make sure you stay tuned and pull up for all of those live streams. The call-in show after the Giants game went very well, very informative, always hilarious. So make sure you pull up for those and call in if you want to, make sure your voice is heard and everything. And also become a channel member because I'm doing exclusive film sessions throughout the week that are only for channel members. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into this video, man. Let's get it. Adam. All right, so before the game even started, the inactives for the Commanders versus Giants game was pretty interesting. Like guys like quarterback Sam Hartman, safety Derek Forrest, linebacker Dominique Hampton, guard Chris Paul, that all made sense. They were all inactive the previous week. I was fairly surprised by a couple of those the first week, but by week 2, it was, just the same old. But then Emmanuel Forbes, of course, was inactive because he had the thumb surgery, so we already knew he was going to be out, but that's a new name added. A couple of more new names added. Jamison Crowder, the wide receiver / punt returner, and linebacker Jamin Davis. Those two definitely surprised me. Jamison Crowder because that means that we have a new starting punt returner now. We're going to dive into that here, who that is when we get to special teams. And then Jamin Davis being inactive really surprised me because he was very efficient against the Buccaneers. And you could argue that we needed him against the Giants. We're going to get there when we get there. But first of all, let's start with coaching. And I want to start with offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury because I feel like there's a lot more to dive into offensively than there is anything else. Dan Quinn, I don't really have much to say from him as far as he goes, but we definitely have to talk about Joe Witt Jr. as well. But starting with Cliff Kingsbury, and to me, I don't know what a lot of people are talking about, but to me, outside of a couple of plays, like running it up the middle on 3rd and 4 from like the 6 or 7 yard line, like it was like almost, we were basically like right there to score, and especially doing it without any intentions of going for it on 4th down. Outside of that, and then a couple other plays, I think he had a great play calling day. I feel like he's finally opening up the offense a little bit. I think he killed it. I mean, what can you even draw up and do when your offense commits false start penalties pretty much every red zone trip? I think they had 2 in 1 trip. I mean, it's not much of an excuse because you can still need to find a way as an offensive coordinator. But golly, man, I feel like Cliff Kingsbury is getting the blame from this fan base, and a lot of that should be going towards the offensive line, not Kingsbury himself. Like, as you can see on the screen right now, like, how about an end-around pitch play that was drawn up and called by Cliff Kingsbury that was supposed to go up to Olamide Zaccheaus, but Jayden Daniels bobbled it and then had to just basically take like a 0-yard sack. He just basically fell to the ground because the play was dead. That one was on Jayden Daniels. But if he could have gotten that to Zaccheaus, if you look at it, he had plenty of space and blockers to get into the end zone. And there were a bunch of really good and creative and well-timed play calls all throughout the game. But some highlights include some of the big plays Austin Ekeler had in the passing game, of course, great play designs and calls for all of them, converting 3rd and longs because of them and everything. There's just no way y'all didn't see that play in the second half where the whole play was going right. Jayden Daniels was rolling out right and everything. But then Jayden turned around and threw it underneath to Eckler on a backside pass, and it resulted in a big first down. That was pure play design and play calling excellence from Cliff Kingsbury on that play. That's all it was. Good execution as well, but that was straight from the pen. That was straight smart Cliff Kingsbury. I even believe that some of the plays he called previously in the game led up to that play. He was probably waiting on calling that play, and he was setting it up leading up to that. And I mean, that's creativity as well. I mean, to have everybody going right and then suddenly everybody's going left, and the Giants defense completely overcommitted to the right. You know, I think that was very creative, and our fan base has been screaming for offensive creativity from our offensive coordinator for years now, and we're finally getting some of that. And what about the long drives he put together? How can we forget that? We dominated time of possession because of the offense, not the defense whatsoever at all. Even just from the opening drive, let's start there. I mean, we had 5 straight pass plays. Cliff Kingsbury gave Jayden Daniels a lot of wide receiver screens to get him going. He was 6 of 6 for 31 yards in that opening drive. He converted on third down twice, once via a penalty and once on a 5-yard completion, and converted a 4th and 1. Daniels scrambled for 9 yards on a 3rd and 10, hit on his first 5 passes for 19 yards, and the Giants did have 2 big sacks there, but that's the offensive line's fault. And then I'm gonna talk about this soon, we burned 2 timeouts before snaps, which really suck. I mean, how you burn 2 timeouts in the first drive, not even just the first quarter, first drive. And then De'Ami Brown caught 2 passes for 17 yards. That was probably the only 2 passes he had all game. Noah Brown made his Commanders debut with his first catch for 7 yards. And then poor Terry McLaurin had a screen for -2. Austin Eckler had a really good opening drive game as well. He had 1 run for 13 yards. And then we had a false start by Ben Sinnott on a 4th and 1 that forced a field goal attempt. But overall, that opening drive was very eventful. My main point is, even with all of the random errors and mistakes that were player calls, with the sacks allowed and the Ben Sinnott false start penalty that set us back, the opening drive ended up being 16 plays, 64 yards over the course of 9.5 minutes, man. The Giants didn't start their first offensive drive until only like 5.5 minutes in the first quarter. And then we had other drives, all of the drives that lasted 10 plays, 5 minutes and 30 seconds, 14 plays, 6.5 minutes, 9 plays, 5 minutes, 9 plays, 4.5 minutes, and then 8 plays, 65 yards to end the game with easy short range game-winning field goal opportunity. That was Cliff Kingsbury for all of that, man. And then shouts out to Craig Hoffman, because I completely agree here. He said, triple option on 4th down. Love to see it. If you're going to go from the gun, that's the way. Follow it up with another screen where Cosme absolutely cleaned the Giants dude's clock. That was fun. So there was like a back-to-back play situation where we were going for it on 4th down. I agree. I like the fact that we ran it out of triple option. I think we just went ahead and let Brian Robinson sort of built as like the fullback there to get the ball immediately. The Giants were not ready. He ended up picking like, instead of even just getting 1 yard, he ended up getting like 4 or 5. And there were a few times in this game that like 3rd and 1, we ended up picking like 8 or 10 up or something like that. It was crazy. And then again, after that, they're getting ready for the triple option. We follow it up with a screen, and then Samuel Cosme had the leeway in the room to go and just basically pancake somebody. I mean, I just absolutely love the play calling. I'm pretty sure the players love the play calling, especially with as much as we ran the ball. Remember, our offensive lineman last year was screaming for Eric Bieniemy to run the ball more. As an offensive lineman, you prefer to run the ball more. It's easier to block forward than to try to back up and block some of these elite edge rushers. Are the apex athletes of the NFL. They are the freakiest of freak athletes, because they're really one of the only positions where it requires you to be a freak athlete for you to be a dominant player. So just naturally, just through years and years and years of the NFL draft, of NFL development, edge rushers are the freakiest guys on the field, basically. Most of the time, almost all of the time. And as an offensive lineman, you prefer to be in attack mode rather than backpedaling. You're like 300 pounds and you're backpedaling. I mean, that's not fun. and then you're having to backpedal and still block these freak athletes that are trying to attack you and get to your quarterback. Come on, man. So these guys are so happy that we're running the ball a lot. And even as far as the passing game goes, an extension of the run game with all of these screens. Now, granted, not all of them worked, but they worked better this time around than they ever did with Eric Bieniemy, and I'll take it. Now, I do have a few gripes with Cliff Kingsbury though. Like, one, going back to the timeout thing, I hate how much we've had to use our timeouts on offense these first 2 weeks, man. Because we used 2 timeouts on offense alone in just the opening drive of this Giants game. But it even goes back to the Buccaneers game where we were using up our timeouts on offense because we just weren't ready to get the play call off. I don't exactly know whose fault it was. Jayden Daniels, the offensive line, maybe some receivers, who knows. But either way, we just weren't ready, and we have had to burn timeouts on offense, and I don't like that. And then even worse, we got a false start penalty after one of the timeouts. Like, we literally called a timeout, and then we had all of that time to prepare. We came out, false start. I mean, we might as well not even call the timeout in the first place. Just went out bad and end up kicking the field goal anyway. We used the timeout and then got the false start. We kicked the field goal. Why did we just not call the timeout? Just go ahead and have a bad play and then just kick that field goal and we could have kept that timeout. I mean, of course, hindsight's 2020, but it's just the false start penalties were terrible today. We're definitely going to talk about that when we get to the offensive line, but the timeouts really suck because especially one of them, we ended up getting a false start penalty right afterwards and kicking the field goal anyway, so that was crazy. And I think that one that I'm talking about specifically on that opening drive was by rookie tight end Ben Sinnott on that first drive, but all of the other ones from the offensive line, which is no excuse because all of those guys are veterans. Now, granted, except for Brandon Coleman, everybody's a veteran. Now, granted, maybe a lot of those guys, this is their first time playing for the Washington Commanders specifically, but all of these guys are like at least 4-year plus veterans, I think, except for Brandon Coleman, so there's no excuse. Also, I don't like these Jayden Daniels runs up the middle that I've been seeing. Like, I mean, it's been back-to-back games so far to start the season. We just keep seeing. I see the logic. Like, I see how you think, okay, that this is like the thing they least expect. Everybody's expecting us to want to protect our quarterback. We should be able to just go empty and just run it right up the middle with the quarterback on a draw. He should be able to get a lot of yards. I see the logic, but it's not worth it in my opinion, man. I wouldn't be surprised, though, if he calls one and he goes for like a 60-yard touchdown some point this season, but still, just personally not worth it to me. And you know what? Now that I actually think about it, really my biggest gripe with Cliff Kingsbury is that he's not finding a way to get Terry McLaurin going. Now, granted, the blame can be placed on a lot of different factors, even outside of Cliff Kingsbury. Maybe it's even Terry McLaurin himself. Maybe it's the offensive line not giving Jayden Daniels enough time to scan the field and find Terry. Maybe it's Jayden Daniels not seeing him when he's open. But I'm telling you, man, I feel like we got to get him involved more often, especially sooner as well. I feel like that first play, the very first play on offense for us, being a screen to Terry McLaurin was really like a FU from Cliff Kingsbury to everybody else. I really do, man. But there was one play where Terry McLaurin it would have been the biggest catch of the day for him, but it was called back because of a stupid penalty. It had nothing to do with the play at all. It was I think it was Nick Allegretti with an illegal man down the field or something like that. It completely had no effect on the play. But still, man, you got to get Terry McLaurin involved. 127 receiving yards for Neighbors, 22 receiving yards for Terry McLaurin is inexcusable. Even though he did have six catches, a lot of those were behind the line of scrimmage on screens, man. I know teams are doing everything they can do to stop Terry McLaurin first, and then they worry about everybody else after that. Everything else is secondary, but stopping Terry McLaurin is primary. Todd Bowles even literally said that out loud to the media after our game against them last week. But there's still no excuse. Malik Neighbors was the entire offense, and our defense knew that, and he still killed us all game. So figure it out, Cliff Kingsbury. Find a way to get him the ball, just like the Vikings somehow find a way to get Justin Jefferson the ball, even though everybody knows he's going to get targeted. They want to get him going. He's their best player on offense. I mean, just like how we know how any opponent that we go against, we know that their receiver, they want to get that one guy, especially the ball, the most, and we still can't find a way to stop him. How about we be able to do that on offense? But going back to, man, I'm telling you, Cliff Kingsbury overall was in his bag yesterday, man. First of all, one sign that's like a true indication that he was in his bag. I don't think a lot of y'all noticed, but we didn't punt all game, y'all. Do y'all not understand how crazy that is? Like, we have not done that since week 7 of the 2021 season when the team played the Green Bay Packers. And out of 166 career games for Tressway, he's only not punted in 2 of them. Literally just those 2 games. Yesterday against the Buccaneers and again 2001 against the Green Bay Packers, man. That's literally it. And I don't ever remember a Commanders offense of recent memory that converted third downs the way that we did. Not even just like third down percentage wise, but I'm talking about length, like third and longs, like just making them look easy. And I know people are mad that we got to the red zone and didn't score touchdowns a lot of times. I'm mad too. But do y'all not remember the past few years where we were just happy to get past the 50-yard line? Like, thank goodness we're on the opponent's side of the field. And it wasn't like we really started with great field position in any particular drive. We were driving down the entire field for all of those drives. And I also feel like it's noteworthy that the Giants may actually have a pretty good defense. I feel like that is noteworthy. And of course, when you get to the red zone, it's harder to score. It's harder to have success as an offense. That's just natural. The margins are smaller. The defense has less ground to cover. Instead of having to worry about covering 80 yards, they only have to cover like 20 to 30, including the end zone. Yeah, I know. I mean, the end zone situation was ugly, but I definitely put a lot of the blame on the offensive line penalties that kept setting us back more than anything else. And what's really crazy is that we were really efficient last week. That's the weird part. We scored 3 touchdowns last week, which does give me hope and makes me believe even more that the red zone efficiency came from the penalties more than anything else. I mean, think about it. No penalties in the red zone last week. 3 touchdowns this week, like 7 penalties in the red zone. I think every red zone trip but 1, and then we had like 2 in one singular red zone trip. No touchdowns. I mean, of course, we can't blame everything on false starts, but I don't think that it was a big coincidence. I think there is a direct correlation there. So we fixed those. I think we can score in the red zone. Last week against the Buccaneers gave me hope for that. Again, we scored 3 touchdowns against a really good Tampa Bay Buccaneers team. They only allowed the Detroit Lions to score, like 16 points? We outscored the Detroit Lions when it comes to going against the Buccaneers in back-to-back weeks. So, I mean, I really think we have it in us. It's not that big of a problem. I just thought it was a very weird day. And then shouts out to Grant Paulson for pointing this out because Tressway punted 0 times against the Giants. The Commanders gained 425 yards, averaged 6.2 yards per play, netted 215 yards on the ground, and didn't turn the ball over. You'll take that every single time. You're eventually gonna, I mean, you keep knocking on that door, you're eventually gonna get in. Also, shouts out to We Want Dallas for pointing this out. The Commanders offense averaged 6.2 yards per play yesterday. That would be good for 3rd best in the league last year if extrapolated over a full season. Red zone woes were frustrating, but overall a very good day for an offense with a rookie quarterback in his 2nd start, all things considered. I completely agree. Now moving on to Joe Witt Jr., our defensive coordinator wise, I feel like he did a pretty good job of adapting in the game. I mean, it wasn't like the best play calling game of all time. Maybe it took a little too long for him to adapt, but we got to understand that he's working with the things that he has that he doesn't want. I mean, you can clearly tell from these first 2 games that they want to run a lot of man coverage and be aggressive on defense. A lot of man coverage where like maybe 3 or 4 guys, we know what they're doing every single play, but everybody else, we can mix it up and you know, this is like a different thing on a down-to-down basis. Maybe they're blitzing, maybe they're in coverage, who knows? They definitely want to be aggressive and confusing for opposing offenses, but right now, St. Juice is the only corner that we have that can cover anybody for even a decent amount of time. So maybe Forbes can come back and be at least better than Michael Davis, which is not hard to do because, boy, Michael Davis was terrible. Arguably the worst player we threw on the field yesterday. But this forced Witt to basically switch to a zone coverage later on in the game. You could just tell that we don't have the guys that he wants to have just yet, man. We're trying to be aggressive and force turnovers like they did in Dallas, but they just simply don't have the guys in the secondary to do that yet. Or at the very least, these guys that we do have just aren't ready to execute it the way that Witt wants it to be executed yet so far this season. Maybe sometime mid-season they figure it out and get it going. So shouts out to Witt for at least realizing the way that things worked in Dallas will not necessarily work here yet, but at the same time, at least giving these guys the opportunity to show it in back-to-back games. Against the Buccaneers, tried it, didn't work, switched it up. Against the Giants, came back out, tried it for the majority of the game, didn't work, switched it up. And I mean, I'll take it. We just have to adjust to make do with what we have right now. I shout out Joe Witt Jr. for that overall. Again, not the best day, but you know, at least we made adjustments, which is more than what you could say for the Rivera era for a lot of it. And then shouts out to Nicky Javala for this one. Just, you know, basically let's look at where all of the penalties came from, because we have now been penalized 17 times in the first 2 weeks. That has to be some of the most in the NFL. 5 false starts, 2 defensive pass interferences, illegal use of hands, 2 mini men on the field, illegal block above the waist, kickoff out of bounds. K. York, I still don't understand that one. Face mask. I believe one of those defensive pass interferences and face mask are all on Emmanuel Forbes from that one play. Illegal formation, offensive holding during a kickoff return, unsportsmanlike conduct, ineligible downfield pass, and defensive offsides. That is actually pretty crazy how many different assortment of things it's been. So it's not like one particular thing that you can look at, or at least a handful, and be like, we just got to focus on those things. It's just overall the team has just not been playing well and being very disciplined. Of course, you naturally look at the head coach for that. Now moving on to the quarterback situation. And first of all, straight off the rip, man, with Jayden Daniels, I know we as a fan base get scared every time he runs because of the hits, like that one that knocked the wind out of him, but if you really look at the game, he takes the cleanest and biggest hits that look like they caused the most damage to him from standing in that pocket behind this offensive line, man. I'm telling you, very honestly, I'm not gonna lie. I was super scared when he was laying on that ground like that, and then Jeff Driscoll had to come into the game for one play just to hand it off to, I believe it was Austin Eckler. But when I saw the replay, I even said it on my live stream, it looked like he either got the wind knocked out of him or some type of rib injury. And then when I saw how fast he threw his helmet off in the replay after he fell to the ground, I could tell that it was basically him getting the wind knocked out of him. And then Dan Quinn confirmed that's what happened after the game in his press conference. And what's even crazier, up to that point where he had to leave that game for a play, he had 5 carries and had been sacked 5 times, and that didn't even count the shot that he took out of bounds that wasn't called as a late hit that should have been. But I thought it was funny that immediately after he came back into the game, he had Terry on a really nice first down throw. That boy didn't get the wind knocked out of him, like they say. Honestly, he got some sense knocked into him. That's what it seemed like, because it's after that hit, after he was on that ground for that little bit, came onto that sideline because I think he had to come off the field for a play because he took his helmet off the field, and that's technically like a rule that if you take your helmet off, it doesn't fly off necessarily by somebody else's doing. You got to at least come off the field for a play and come back in. So I feel like as soon as that happened, he came back in and he was a completely different quarterback, man. Shouts out to Tan Top Podcast for pointing this out. After the rib shot that knocked the wind out of Jayden Daniels, he only scrambled twice the rest of the game. That play happened with 6 minutes, 54 seconds left in the second quarter. He was doing all of that scrambling before then. After that, he said, all right, maybe I should calm down on the scrambles and become a better pocket quarterback, but a better pocket passer. And that he did. Oh, man, I can't wait to talk about that. I mean, that hit literally knocked him into becoming a better quarterback for us, man. He tightened up and finally started to show the pocket passer that I knew he could be from watching his tape in college and this offseason, like the preseason and things like that, and the training camp practices that we saw. I knew he had it in him, and it seemed like that Giants player just had to knock it into him. But either way, man, in that second half, man, that was a different quarterback. He got the ball out. He didn't run at first sight of pressure or anything like that. The second half, he went 12 of 16 for 139 yards passing. He pushed the ball down the field. He hit end breakers, like with timing. Like those were things that he definitely missed against the Buccaneers, and maybe he even missed it against the Giants a little bit. But like those timing routes where you throw it before the guy's even necessarily open, he trusted himself a little bit more with those in that second half. He only had 1 sack in the second half. He had 4 in the first half, and he only had 3 runs technically in that second half, but for the most part, he threw that ball, and I really appreciate that. So at worst, Jayden Daniels grew up today. I mean, there are things we can nitpick from him today, and we're going to talk about a couple of them. But overall, this guy grew up right in front of our eyes, man. Jayden Daniels was diming up in the second half, and I'm telling you right now, it's going to make teams play him differently moving forward. He's shown the NFL that you have to defend this offense beyond just 5 to 10 yards now. He grew up in that second half, dog. Turned into a great pocket passer. And to me, it seems like we have the guy. He shows CJ Stroud level flashes in that game, especially the second half. And then, I mean, granted, he doesn't have any touchdown throws in his first 2 career games, but that offense is moving, and he has some touchdown runs in that Buccaneers game. Now, negatives. He needs to throw the ball out of bounds instead of taking sacks when all hope is lost on plays. When it's just nothing left, just go ahead and throw it out of bounds. So instead of losing 5 yards and losing some game clock, you just throw it out of bounds. And instead, I think it was even like, I know it happened a couple of times early in the game, but even later in the game, instead of it being like a 3rd and 8, he lost like 4 yards on 2nd and 8, and then it turned into like a 3rd and 12 or something like that. Just throw it out of bounds, man. Keep everything more manageable. Keep us a little bit more on schedule. He also needs to focus on being a pocket passer more, obviously. But it's hard for me to put that in the negatives because in that second half, he seemed to figure it out. So it's hard to really like nitpick that because that's more so a Jayden Daniels first half problem. Hopefully, seemed like second half him had that down pat. But, and if I had to really nitpick Jayden, he had one hospital ball to Terry McLaurin, and shouts out to that Giants linebacker because he did a good job of pulling up to avoid basically knocking Terry out of the game, man. That was a big-time hospital ball. Did not like that throw from Jayden Daniels. It didn't result in anything crazy. It was an incomplete pass, but we got to watch out for those. And of course, this is a shout out to Cliff Kingsbury and Jayden Daniels. Can we attack down the field more, man? I know the offensive line pass protection isn't the best. They make it hard, but that boy Jayden Daniels has it in him. We got to find a way to get it out of him more often, man. And just 10 yards past the line of scrimmage only this game. Now, granted, you know, there's a huge difference between what he did against the Buccaneers and against the Giants, and this is what I want to point out. Shouts out to Pro Football Focus Nick Ackridge for this. Again, on throws 10 yards past the line of scrimmage. First 6 quarters, that's the 4 against the Buccaneers and the first 2 against the Giants, he was 3 of 6 for 36 yards. The second half against the Giants alone, just 2 quarters, 6 of 8 for 107 yards. I'm telling you, they are opening up this offense right now, and Jayden Daniels is starting to become more comfortable. And for a lot of people, it typically takes a lot of the season. For Jayden Daniels, it only took 6 quarters and a hit to the ribs, basically. But even with all of that, I want to remind you that Jayden Daniels has at the very least been the best rookie quarterback in the NFL so far, and I would say by far. Caleb Williams looks like a deer in headlights throwing triple covered picks to Georgia dogs, like my boy, you know what I'm saying? And Bo Nix is just plain old awful. Even if you throw in second-year quarterbacks, the only quarterback you can say definitively that is better than Jayden Daniels is CJ Stroud right now. That's it. Now, I'm not expecting Caleb Williams to be awful forever, but 3 net yards per pass attempt is the worst for any quarterback in weeks 1 and 2 in the last 10 years, y'all. That is a terrible start. He's even showing, shouts out to Jayden Daniels, he's even showing nuance that most of the other young quarterbacks don't have, no matter what year they came into the NFL, within the past 3, 4, 5 drafts probably. Because on one of those Zach Ertz first down throws, I don't know if y'all noticed, but before the snap, Jayden correctly called out a blitzing linebacker for the offensive line to pick up. They adjusted, and then he was able to throw that pass to Zach Ertz. It allowed Jayden Daniels to even have the time to make the throw. But even compared to all NFL quarterbacks, forget the young guys, how about all of them? When you're looking at quarterback efficiency through week 2 of football, EPA per play, minimum 20 dropbacks, Jayden Daniels is 6th. It's Derek Carr number 1, which I'm not surprised by how he's done the Panthers and the Cowboys, man. Shouts out to Derek Carr for how he did them Cowboys this past weekend. Then Josh Allen number 2, Kyler Murray, who's balling number 3, Baker Mayfield, who's killing it right now, number 4, Sam Darnold, who's a pretty big surprise, but he has been balling number 5, and then Jayden Daniels is number 6, above Jalen Hurts, then CJ Stroud, then Aaron Rodgers, then Geno Smith, then Jordan Love, then Brock Purdy, then Pat Mahomes, who has honestly not been playing well. Hey, shouts out to the refs and everybody else in the NFL. The only people that are ahead of Jayden Daniels in EPA per play right now out of the entire NFL, not just rookie quarterbacks, not just young quarterbacks, Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Josh Allen, and Derek Carr number 1. Also, let's take a look at Jayden Daniels' ranks in the NFL so far. Out of everything, he's 12th amongst quarterbacks in passing yards with 410, not bad. He's 3rd among quarterbacks in passing completion percentage with 75.5%. Now, granted, a lot of these are screens. That's why his average depth of target is not very good. It's not very large. You know, he throws very short passes on average because a lot of them are screens. But still, 3rd in passing completion percentage is still noteworthy, especially since he has taken shots down the field. He hasn't been devoid of deep shots, but it is mostly a screen game situation going on. But shouts out to Cliff Kingsbury for giving him easy throws to get him in rhythm and to gain his confidence. He's 12th amongst quarterbacks and running backs in rushing yards with 132. Again, that's including all running backs in the NFL as well. He's 1st among all rookie quarterbacks in passing yards and 1st among all rookies in rushing yards, of course, as well. This guy is a dog. And I also don't want people sleeping on how good Jayden Daniels is in the read option too. I feel like that's a very specific thing that he's very good at and that is very deadly. Now, of course, he's really fast and agile, so it's great to be like the guy that actually keeps the ball and runs with it. But I also love his decision making with the read option as well. That's probably the most important part. And I'm talking about knowing when to give it to the running back or knowing when to keep it yourself. That's an important decision right there. And he made some really smart decisions in that game with that read option. That's a deadly reason as to why he's almost impossible to game plan for, because he's such a smart quarterback both pre-snap and post-snap with understanding and reading defenses, both with the run game stuff like read option and the passing game stuff as well. And so I just really don't know what you really do to defend a guy like this, especially once he got the second half Jayden Daniels. I really have no idea what as a defense you draw up to stop that, man. Also, shouts out to Craig Hoffman for this, because I agree. First half was not great process-wise, but he showed how dangerous he could be. And then the second half showed massive growth. Watching him flip the script was really impressive. He got everything you want. And today was another step in a long journey to applying it. Let's get it, man. Also, Jayden Daniels is off to a hot start in his first 2 weeks as an NFL quarterback. He's 40 of 53 with 75% completion percentage, 410 passing yards, 132 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, and a 96.1 passer rating in these first 2 weeks. Also, Jayden Daniels over the first 2 regular season games, again, completion percentage of 75.5, yards per attempt are 7.74, no touchdown passes, but also, and most importantly, no turnovers. Bo Nix and Caleb Williams can't say that. He has 21 carries for 136 yards and 2 touchdowns when you take out the kneel downs and botched plays that went down as runs. And then another reason that he's hard to defend, I mean, within just the first quarter alone, Jayden Daniels completed 7 passes to 6 different receivers. Just the first quarter alone. That's a very underrated part of quarterbacking the right way, to be able to get the ball to everybody, to make sure the defense defends everybody. And I feel like that's going to eventually help Terry McLaurin get open a little bit more, because they have to worry about everybody and everything, including Jayden Daniels using his legs and this dominant running back group that we have right now. Speaking of, let's move on to this running back group. I'm telling you, man, that opening kickoff from Austin Ekeler set it off, man. Shouts out to him for that. And it sucks, too, because a penalty from Pro Bowl special teamer Nick Bellore, who we just recently signed, is the reason that got brought back. And again, from what I saw, it looked like that penalty that Nick Bellore had on that kickoff had no effect on Austin Ekeler being able to return it all the way down the field. Like, no effect at all. So that really makes me sick to my stomach, because if he didn't commit that penalty, holding whatever it was, Austin Ekeler still would have ran for a kickoff return for a touchdown. It was just completely unnecessary, completely stupid. But man, the main point is, Austin Ekeler, man, shouts out to you, man, because not only did you have that amazing kick return, which makes me very optimistic that you're going to be a great kick returner for us this season, but on top of that, you also got the Giants kicker hurt on that play when it looked like he basically, Graham Gano, pulled his hamstring trying to chase him down. So shouts out to Austin Ekeler for that, man. And then also, man, it looks like he found the fountain of youth in Washington, man. I mean, first of all, again, he should have had that kickoff return for a touchdown. And then later on in the first half, he turned a 3rd and 15 into a 4th and 1 with an electric run where he made a couple of guys miss on his own. You know, it was a good play call, good play design and execution from the team, but really it was just Austin Ekeler making guys miss. I mean, he was making people miss all day. Now, granted, yeah, B-Rob had the better overall game, but Austin Ekeler was doing those runs that gave you the stank face, like making guys miss with agility, like guys falling all over the place around him and things like that. That guy's found the fountain of youth, and the reason that I'm a little surprised is because when you watch his tape last year with the Chargers, he wasn't moving like that. That's why when we signed him as a free agent, I was cautiously optimistic. I'm like, this guy's a touchdown magnet, but he does have a fumble problem, and he doesn't look like he has that same juice that he had a couple of years ago. Now he does. This looks like prime Austin Ekeler that was leading the NFL in touchdowns. I don't know what happened last year. Maybe he was a little banged up, but that is a different running back from what I saw on tape when we signed him as a free agent, and I'm happy to hear it and see it. But now moving on to Brian Robinson. Speaking of him, man, he definitely needs to be in the conversations for one of the best young running backs in the league, man. I think he's dangerously underrated, but I was talking about that all offseason because you saw the explosive plays that he was having, even for Eric Bieniemy with how ugly that offense is. You saw that he's a very underrated pass catcher. I wanted him to improve his vision coming into the season. It seems like he's done that, man. It definitely seems like he's done that. But again, before we even get all the way to Brian Robinson, because I'm just getting ahead of myself, I'm excited. Shouts out to Austin Ekeler, man, because again, a lot of people thought you were done. A lot of people were predicting for him to have a fall off, but yesterday he had 11 touches for 85 yards total, 3 targets, 3 catches for 47 yards. He dashed for a 27-yard screen, averaged 4.8 yards per carry, and he has a team leading 99 receiving yards through the first 2 games. Right now, he's our leading receiver through the first 2 weeks of football, man. But now back to Brian Robinson and how underrated he is. First of all, 17 carries, 133 rushing yards. He averaged 7.24 yards after contact per carry against the Giants. So after the first guy tried to tackle him, he averaged 7.24 yards per snap against the Giants. That's ridiculous, man. Shouts out the Commanders realm, because I completely agree. B-Rob is coming into his own. He doesn't have the breakaway speed, as you saw him get hawked down, which could have been one of our only touchdowns of the game, but he got hawked down from behind that one play. But I'll take the punishing runs all day, and you let Austin Ekeler do the explosive runs. I'll take it. I completely agree. And shouts out to B-Rob for getting a new career high with that 133 rushing yards off 17 carries again. His previous high was 105 in 2002 versus them sorry little Falcons. So I love to hear that. But he officially outdid himself. And our running back group, I would say, is arguably the best position group we have on the entire team so far these first 2 weeks. At a certain point in the game, like in the third quarter somewhere, those two, between Brian Robinson and Austin Ekeler, had 160 yards on the ground, with B-Rob averaging almost 9 yards per carry and Austin Ekeler almost averaging 5.4 yards per carry. But man, B-Rob had the best game of his life, dog. And I hope he keeps this up, man. And on that last drop, it was literally just the Jayden Daniels and Brian Robinson show. They both just took over the game. And I thought it was hilarious too, because when he reacted to the game that he had after the game in his presser, he was asked about his new career high in rushing yards after the game, and he said, quote, "It's been a while since I've had 17 carries too." Unquote. And I love that quote, man. He's basically saying that's basically a shot at Eric Bieniemy. If you let me run the ball a lot, you'll see me have great games. But it wasn't even the opposing defense that's stopping me. It was my own offensive coordinator, is basically what he was saying. Eric Bieniemy was the one that was shutting them down. And I'm telling you, Brian Robinson can do his thing. Austin Ekeler included, man. Look at this run game. It's beautiful, man. That's going to be part of our identity right there. That's what we're going to lean on the most. This deadly run game, including Jayden Daniels' legs and the extension of the run game with the screens that we do all of the time. But run game specifically, Anthony Lynn, his impact is being felt right now. He matters, man. To go from the running game that we had last year to the one that we have now. And Cliff Kingsbury, he can run the ball pretty well. I feel like he gets hated on a little bit too much as run game wise as a coordinator, especially with his time head coach for the Arizona Cardinals. But Cliff Kingsbury never ran the ball this efficiently with just pure running backs. And Eric Bieniemy definitely never did. Anthony Lynn, I feel like, is having a big impact. But also, really shouts out to everybody involved in the run game, because I feel like Logan Paulson did a great job bringing up a great point after the game, saying that the run game is really like a mixture of contributions from several offensive coaches. Like Bobby Johnson, our offensive lines coach, was the reason that we ran a few plays of like guard, and center guard pulls to the play side of the run. And you could tell because the Giants did that a lot last year when was their offensive coordinator there last year. And then Brian Johnson, who we brought over from the Eagles, you could tell that he has a contribution because we ran that zone keeper to Zach Ertz, and you saw the Eagles run that a lot last year. And then Cliff Kingsbury, you can throw him in there as well. We ran a QB draw out of empty formation, and you saw that a lot when he was the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. It's a big collaborative effort, and I'm happy that this is a situation where it's more like the more minds and more opinions, the merrier, the better, rather than it looking like too many chefs in the kitchen, because this could easily go the wrong way when you have too many people contributing. Maybe nobody has enough say, and then now we just have a mixture of nothing, just a jack of all trades type of situation. I can only imagine how deadly this run game is going to become when the receivers learn how to consistently block defensive backs on the outside, man. And I'm more so looking at Luke McCaffrey, because he had some bad blocks in that game against the Giants that really stopped us from gaining a lot more yards. Once they get that going, this run game is going to be unstoppable. I'm telling you right now. Speaking of wide receivers like Luke McCaffrey, let's talk about the receivers. And of course, the name of the game today is Terry McLaurin. Now, Noah Brown is the name of the game on the positive side, but we can't skip over Terry McLaurin, man. And shouts out to Dan Dugan for pointing this out. He said his goal post game is to get to the bottom of this blood feud between Deonte Banks and Terry McLaurin. They're joining on every play, not even after the play, as they approach the line, just talking crazy. And that is definitely a rivalry that was started by Deonte Banks. Terry McLaurin was minding his own business, and Deonte Banks really started that last year. So that's a super reason why I wish we would allow Terry McLaurin to ball out. People are talking crazy as if they're shutting him down, and and I don't really honestly feel like it's the DB more so. I feel like it's more so we're just not throwing on the ball when he is actually open. But I guess I got to rewatch the tape a lot more, look at the all-22 version to really get an idea of whose fault it exactly is. But man, I mean, he had his biggest catch of the day was called back for an illegal man down the field that would have probably doubled his receiving yards for the day and would have had a completely different look on his stat line. He ended up only having 6 catches for 22 yards, but it would have ended up being like 7 catches for like 40 something. And a lot of his catches would just happen to be screens. A few of them resulted in negative yards, which it does suck. But happy birthday, Terry McLaurin, I guess. You know what I'm saying? His birthday was yesterday while he was playing, and I wish we would have gotten him the ball for that. Just that alone, a lot more too as well, man. He even said before the game in practice, like a couple of days ago, that it's gonna be spooky season for the Giants, and I mean, sadly he wasn't able to show that. And me personally, I'm just hoping, and I really don't think that's necessarily his fault. Well, what's even sadder is look on the screen right now, because these are his stats from the first 2 games of the last few seasons, going all the way back to 2020. And this is technically his worst start in the first 2 weeks of a season of his entire career. We've complained about Scott Turner. We've complained about Eric Bieniemy not giving him the ball. And this is technically his worst start. Now, granted, Eric Bieniemy gave him less targets and less receptions the first 2 weeks, but at least he had more yards. This is his worst yardage start in the first 2 weeks of a season ever. But at the same time, he has 12 targets on 8 receptions, but it just hasn't turned into anything. But granted, now a lot of those targets are screens, but still, man, we just got to figure it out. Now, moving on from Terry McLaurin, man, Noah Brown had an amazing debut, man. That's why that's literally what this receiving core has been missing, especially in that week 1 game against the Buccaneers. And it's crazy because they're still ramping him up. Like, I don't think y'all realize, but he played the least snaps out of all Commanders wide receivers in that game. And yet he still found a way to lead the receiving group in reception yards with 56, only behind Zach Ertz, who had 62, but he's technically a tight end. And from what I saw, you could say he was probably the receiver that was open the most consistently throughout that game. And one of the catches that he made, like almost a diving catch towards the end of the game, was crazy. We needed that. I think that may have been the last drive of the game. It was like a 40-yard reception or something like that. Thank goodness we signed him right before the season started, because we probably don't win that game without the plays that he made, getting open all the time and things like that. And I'm not expecting him to have the least snaps moving forward. I think they just didn't play him against the Buccaneers because he wasn't ready. He didn't know the playbook and things like that. They were ramping him up. And I feel like today, I think he only had like 20 snaps. And again, every other receiver on the roster that played in that game had more snaps than him. But I think this is just a slow process to slowly work him up. I think next week against the Bengals on Monday, especially with that extra day to practice, I think Noah Brown will be one of the leading receivers in snaps and also yards as well. But overall, just the overall receiving group, man, as a whole, I feel like my biggest gripe right now, even beyond just them not getting open as much as I hoped, it's got to be that blocking on those outside runs and screens, man. Most notably, Luke McCaffrey, man. That was messing up a lot of the Cliff Kingsbury play calls. We have to improve that. I feel like even a couple of those Terry McLaurin screens probably could have went for a lot more yards if Luke McCaffrey or another receiver just blocked way better. So we got to improve there. Now moving on to the tight ends, and the only real noteworthy tight end to talk about is Zach Ertz. The only thing I noticed about Ben Sinnott was the penalty he had that set us back on that initial drive that went all the way down the field. It took up almost 10 minutes of time, but resulted in a field goal. We were about to go for it on 4th and 1, but he did a false start, and we just ended up having to kick the field goal. So that sucked. That could have ended up being a touchdown if he didn't do that. And then John Bates, I mean, he's always going to block, but it's not going to be very noticeable, his impact on the game, until you really look at the all-22. But Zach Ertz balled out. I mean, that super contested catch he came down with early in the game, that was huge at the time, man. We needed that. It may have even been like a 3rd down conversion situation, so we really needed that. And that wasn't a great ball by Jayden Daniels. That one floated for a little while. I was scared and thought it was intercepted at first, but he wrestled it away, and then he proceeded to ball out some more in that game. There was a moment where he had 2 huge back-to-back 1st down receptions on each of those catches. I mean, he ended up being our leading receiver with 62 yards, and he caught all 4 of his targets. I'm telling you, you, man, he balled out. And shouts out to Zach Ertz too, because now he is one of 12 tight ends in NFL history to put up at least 7,500 receiving yards in a career. So that guy looks like he's on the way to the Hall of Fame, mostly for what he did against us, but at least now he's doing it for us. Now moving on to the offensive line, and we all know what we have to talk about the most, and first and foremost with the offensive line: false start penalties in the red zone, man. And were they purely just mistakes? I mean, that's really my only question. Or were they just that afraid of the Giants' defensive line? Were they getting antsy and trying to get off a little bit earlier so that they could have a better chance of blocking them? Or maybe was it Bobby Johnson, our offensive lines coach, who we just hired from the Giants this offseason? Maybe he was sent here as a spy from the Giants to sabotage us? I don't know, but I have questions there. But now, individual-wise, starting center Tyler Biadasz had a great day from what I noticed. A couple of key blocks on some big running plays, like that 3rd and 1 where Brian Robinson ended up running for like 12, 15 yards right up the middle. Tyler Biadasz was the one that paved the way for him, using his agility to wall off the linebacker. Like, he moved up, immediately turned to the side, and created a wall for Brian Robinson to get past that linebacker that was trying to stop him at the line of scrimmage. Then Andrew Wiley had his typical game of getting whooped a couple of times, but overall had like an alright day. Not a good day, but an alright day. But it was hilarious when he got beat so bad one play by Brian Burns that Samuel Cosmi got a holding penalty to save Jayden Daniels' life, trying to make up for Wiley's mistake, man. That's not good at all, dog. But also, he's not the worst right tackle in the world, just to be honest. But if I'm the Commanders, I'm definitely still looking for a franchise left tackle, especially in the 2025 free agency or draft. But Wiley is serviceable for now. We can make do. And I feel like last year, he and Samuel Cosmi just started to gain better chemistry throughout the season. And by November, they had that right side pretty much on lock. Hopefully, they can figure that out and get that going before November. Can we get that going before September goes away? At minimum, October, please. And if you're wondering why he plays over Cornelius Lucas at right tackle, it's because Wiley's more athletic than he gets credit for, and he can run block way better than Cornelius Lucas right there. And then I don't remember what play it was, but Noah Brown was wide open for a touchdown, but Jayden Daniels didn't even have a chance to even see him and get the ball out because he was hit so fast by a defensive lineman or a linebacker. It was somebody, and I don't exactly remember which offensive lineman to blame for that, so I'm just going to throw that out in the air. I don't remember if it was Brandon Coleman, Andrew Wiley. I feel like it was one of those two. Do better. And also moving on, speaking of Brandon Coleman, who technically didn't start, he officially came into the game for the first time in the second offensive drive. He was not out there at any point in that first drive that took up nearly 10 minutes. And overall, he had a decent day / bad day, like definitely below average when he was in, from what I noticed. I mean, he had that one play especially where he got beat so quickly by Kayvon Thibodeau, which got Jayden hit while he was throwing the ball out of the back of the end zone on a 3rd and 8 play. Gotta do better there, man. Brandon Coleman was not good in pass protection. I was hoping that he would take a step forward after that Buccaneers game. I feel like if anything, he took a step back, but I pointed this out even before the Giants game even started in my preview video. That's why y'all should make sure y'all check out my preview videos, because I said the Giants D-line is more talented individually than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers D-line. The only reason that Tampa Bay Buccaneers D-line gave Brandon Coleman fits was because Todd Bowles is a genius of a defensive coordinator. He found a way to scheme up some interesting and creative pressures, like he blitzed a linebacker in a weird way that caught Brandon Coleman, a rookie, off guard because he is a rookie. But the Giants, they're not going to have as complicated of a scheme, but like the actual edge rushes that you have to block are better on an individual talent level, better than what he had to do against the Buccaneers. So I wasn't necessarily that surprised that he struggled against the Giants compared to the Buccaneers, because he just went against better, more talented guys in this Giants game. And then Samuel Cosmi-wise, he was a little disappointing considering that I see him as like an all-pro level talent. He wasn't bad, but it wasn't what I hoped for. He did come out of the game for a play or two because he got poked in the eye, and then Michael Dieter took his place for a couple of plays, but he came back in pretty soon after that, which was really good. I was really excited about that. You can't lose him. You cannot. That's your franchise guard that you just paid big money, so I need more out of him, and I need him to not get hurt. And I don't exactly remember what happened here on who the linebacker were that was responsible, but there was one play on 3rd and 5 on the offense after getting the ball back immediately from the Giants, and the Giants only sent 3 defensive linemen at Jayden Daniels and somehow got 2 guys to hit Jayden Daniels immediately too, within like less than 3 seconds. But luckily defensive pass interference was called and they bailed us out. But golly, man, there's no play that an offense can call and execute to beat a defense that is able to get to the quarterback in less than 3 seconds with only 3 guys rushing. Like, come on, dog. And 2 of them got to Jayden Daniels in that less than 3 seconds. That's terrible, man. But hey, man, shouts out to Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau, because you had Giants reporters talking trash before the game. You had Kayvon Thibodeau talking trash. Brian Burns 3 tackles, 0 sacks. Kayvon Thibodeau 4 tackles, 0 sacks as well. So wasn't coming from them. Most, if not all, of those sacks were by back 7 players, like linebackers and defensive backs, man. The Giants did a great job of dialing up the right blitzes at the right time, and Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns did, you know, actually affect the game with their pressures and things like that. And the QB hits, they got to Jayden Daniels a couple of times, but they were never able to sack him, and I'm happy to hear that, man. We'll take what we could get there. Now moving on to the defensive side of the ball, man, and of course we have a lot to talk about here. Before we even dive into individual position groups, I have a few main points about the defensive side of the ball. First of all, third down defense is still bad, man, which is just unacceptable, dog. I mean, it really is, especially the third and longs that they allow to be converted. Those are like the heartbreakers, man. And this has been a multi-regime problem, dog. Listen to this stat presented by my boy Michael Phillips. Daniel Jones versus Washington. 27 times he's had third down and needed 10 or more yards to convert that third down. 27 times. 8 times he's picked it up. That is a 30% conversion rate. That is completely unacceptable, man. But again, Daniel Jones just seems to have the burgundy and gold number, no matter who the head coach here is, I guess. I don't know. Also, Malik Neighbors was killing us, dog. I feel like that's one of the easiest takeaways, man. We allowed that man to go for 127 yards off 10 receptions and a touchdown. And he should have more if he didn't drop 2 catches. But the most important one, the most notable one, was the catch that basically would have ended the game for us, not giving us a chance to go down and even have a chance to score on offense to win the game with that field goal. So if Neighbors catches that ball, we are hoping for at best to tie the game. I mean, that boy Malik Neighbors had a great game, but that drop that lost them the game, shouts out to him for that. That's what happens though when you have a franchise on your back. You're the reason that they win, and you may be the reason that they lose sometimes as well. It's all on you, and I'm pretty sure he accepts that. He was visibly frustrated on the sideline with himself. And if I were an NFL player, I would always prefer all of the pressure. That's just the type of guy I am. Put the team on my back. If we win, it's because of me. If we lose, it's because of me. I can sleep at night with that. The reason I've always hated playing team sports, man, is because I hate having to depend on somebody else, dog. And so I prefer to be in Malik Neighbors' situation 10 times out of 10. But I know it hurts, man. I know it hurts when you're the reason that you should have won the game, and you're also the reason that you potentially lost the game. But it's hard to blame him after the fantastic game he had throughout the game. But that last drop, hey man, shouts out to him checking the mail from the burgundy and gold. And also another theme of the day, man, our tackling has been pretty bad all season. It's not even just a theme this game. So far, these first 2 games, bad. Now, Michael Davis missing tackles on Malik Neighbors were a lot of them this game, but it's still an overall team problem, because it definitely wasn't just Michael Davis out there missing tackles. Jeremy Chin, I'm looking at you too. I'm looking at a couple of people out there. Even though Frankie Louvo had a good day overall, he still missed a couple of tackles. Also, shouts out to a couple of reporters, as in Mike Bullock and David Harrison, because they brought up some good points that the Giants clearly watched a lot of tape on us from what we did week 1 against the Buccaneers and used it against us this game. Like from Mark Bullock, he said Giants studied the tape from last week. You could tell because the Bucs had 3 nice runs on wham schemes versus the Commanders last week, and the Giants used it on us for a touchdown run in that game. So you could tell they were like, okay, what did the Buccaneers have success against this Commanders defense? We're going to do that against them at the right time and score a touchdown off of it, and they literally did just that. Then David Harrison brought up the fact that on that Malik Neighbors touchdown, safety Jeremy Chin was left guarding nothing but burgundy and gold grass as the Giants rookie receiver broke loose. New York used the same trips bunch look that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers used to give Washington fits in week 1. So they also looked passing, not just run game wise, but passing game wise. What did the Commanders struggle with covering against? And it was that trips bunch side to the left, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers spammed that against us and kept seeing success. The Giants were like, well, why don't we use that against them? And they got a touchdown off of that as well. And also leave it to the Commanders to be the get right game for other teams, man. We keep doing that. That first touchdown that they got against us was the Giants' first touchdown of the season. Now, granted, it's only week 2, but still, they never scored a touchdown against the Vikings. They ended up getting 3 against us, but that first one was crazy. Their only other touchdown before they got that touchdown against us, the first one that they had was a pick 6 for the Vikings thrown by Daniel Jones. Like, until Daniel Jones played us today, he had thrown more touchdowns for the Vikings as a team than the Giants. And then he even threw for 2 touchdowns and led them on a drive to get a third one by the running back. That's just inexcusable, man. We can't be everybody's get right game where they're having a bad season, they're having a bad stretch, and then we come out of nowhere and basically help them out, man. I do not like that at all. And at a certain point in the second quarter, dog, I mean, like, it was bad. Just second quarter alone, the Giants, well, first and second quarter together, the Giants were averaging 8 yards per play, man. And when our defense finally got its first stop of the game, it was only the second we had up to that point in the season, including the Buccaneers, in 10 offensive drives. So we only forced 2 punts on the first 10 offensive drives of the season, man. We still have pretty poor communication and chemistry in the secondary right now. That's another common theme that's been going on these past 2 weeks. But at least it wasn't as many broken coverages as last week. They definitely improved, not allowing like just straight up wide open, nobody on the screen type of passing plays, but they were still just getting straight up beat. It was more so like a one-on-one situation against the Giants, but at least there was some improvement there a little bit. Didn't necessarily feel like it, but it was. And then slightly beyond that, we went into halftime down 12-9. And when you see that score, you assume that the offense is not playing very well and the defense is actually the one that's carrying the team. But nope, it was actually the exact opposite, if anything. Time of possession by the offense is the only reason we only allowed 12 points in the first half. The defense only forced 1 punt. Those were 2 touchdowns. They just went for 2-point conversions and didn't get them. Our offense did a great job of not allowing the Giants to score better than our defense did, man. Like, the Commanders defense entered today allowing 6.4 yards per play, 4th worst in the NFL, mind you, and they were allowing 7.0 yards per play at halftime. And at halftime, we also already allowed the Giants to score double the points they ever scored against the Vikings. They only scored 6 against the Vikings. They scored 12 in half the time against us. That's absolutely insane, man. We got to stop being people's get-right games, man. Also, through 3 halves of football, you know, including the 4 quarters against the Buccaneers and the first 2 against the Giants, we had 49 points allowed, 1 sack, and no turnovers, man. And up to the point of halftime, once we reached halftime, the Commanders had only forced 2 punts on 11 drives through 6 quarters against the Buccaneers and the Giants. That's not good at all. 2 punts on 11 drives is actually really terrible. I also want to know, when we came out of halftime, what did the defense even talk about during halftime? Because after, literally as soon as we got on defense, after a big Tyler Owens hit on special teams, we allowed 2 first downs on 2 straight plays to start the third quarter, man. I was looking like, what are we even doing? What did we even discuss? What did we try? What adjustments did we make during halftime? But soon after that, we had a sack by Clelin Ferrell, which was nice. And thank goodness, because at the very next play, we allowed them to run for like 11 yards, but St. Juice did a great job of forcing the fumble and punching it out on the running back from behind. And that's our first turnover of the season, y'all. But that was a very interesting drive because we were either basically allowing explosive plays or causing explosive plays. They were either running or throwing it for a first down, or we got a sack or a forced fumble. There was no middle, just pure explosive play for either the offense or the defense. That was a really weird, that was the only drive like that all game, really. And the Washington Commanders they have to be the single reason why Daniel Jones hasn't been released yet and is still getting paid big money. Maybe we're playing chess, not checkers. You know, maybe we're the sacrifice for the rest of the NFL to convince the Giants to keep Daniel Jones even longer. And even though he overall had a good overall game against us, admittingly, I can admit that, but he still made some Daniel Jones-like mistakes, man, that bailed out our defense at times. And he was staring down receivers like crazy. So Giants, please keep this guy long term. And if there's any evidence that his agent needs to present to the Giants, just keep showing Commanders games and maybe the Giants will keep him forever. I really hope so. Also, the Washington Commanders defense at the end of this game now ranks last in third down percentage allowed at 61.9, just behind San Francisco. They're not looking too good either as well. And then also we're 31st in sack percentage per drop back. A lack of consistent pressure leads to consistent conversions for a defense with secondary issues. I completely agree. Shouts out to John Kahn for that stat and opinion. And I'm also trying to figure out why we didn't focus our defensive attention on Malik Neighbors a little bit more and a little sooner, man. Now, I know that another receiver scored a touchdown on Mike Sanverstill at some point in the game. So, you see that, Daniel Jones can get the ball to other guys. But I do really want to emphasize that at a certain point in that game, Daniel Jones had 174 yards passing, and Malik Neighbors was 124 of them. He only had 50 yards passing to anybody else on the team combined. I mean, like, at a certain point, we got to say enough is enough. And Neighbors had granted, thank goodness he had a couple of costly drops. It could have been worse. It's not like we ever really stopped them, especially on that drive where our offense ended up potentially kicking the game-winning field goal. They literally stopped themselves. We just could not stop Malik Neighbors, man. But what's super crazy is that shouts out to the Cowboys defense that has been getting torched these first couple of weeks of the season. So maybe the Cowboys defense misses Dan Quinn and Joe Wood Jr. just as much as they miss the Cowboys defensive players. Maybe they're just not meant to be good without each other so far, at least. I mean, there was a point in that game where the Cowboys score was shown up on the Jumbotron. It was 41-19. And the fans roared, and I love that. I love that disdain and pure hate, just pure hate for the Cowboys, to where I think even at that point in the game where they showed the Jumbotron, we were probably losing to the Giants, and the crowd still was excited about the fact that the Cowboys were losing like that, getting embarrassed. I love it, man. And now, moving on to the defensive line. And first of all, this is the second week in a row where Payne gets a pressure that leads to a Clelin Ferrell sack. And as of right now, the guy that I thought would have the least pass rush upside out of our entire edge rusher group is the only one with sacks for our team, and he has all 2 of them, which is not good. Why is that the only guy that has sacks, and why does he only have 2? We have 2 sacks as a team. Not good so far. The first week, we had a lot of pressure. We were second in NFL in pass rush win rate, but it didn't matter because we couldn't finish. And then this game against the Giants, we just weren't even really getting pressure. I don't know what happened. It was just like, we just got worse. We just moved the wrong way. And outside of that pressure, and maybe I got to rewatch the game and rewatch them specifically all game. Just literally watch the game from Daron Payne and Jonathan Allen's point of view the entire time. But where were our highest paid defensive linemen in Jonathan Allen and Daron Payne that game, man? I even remember a play where Jonathan Allen chose the wrong gap and allowed a big run from that Singletary running back. Now, granted, it would be nice if Frankie Louvu didn't get jump cut to another dimension on that play, and he probably could have had a quicker run stop for less yards. But I would just hope that Jonathan Allen could hold down that gap a little bit better. Now, I think we're seeing that we really do miss John Ridgeway as like that double team eating, run stopping presence in the middle of the field as like our nose tackle. We're definitely missing him right now. And also we're definitely missing Jamin Davis. Why was Jamin Davis not active for that game? Before the game even started, he was already listed as inactive. He will not play, and he was not hurt from what I know. And I just don't get it. He was really efficient in the limited snaps that he had against the Buccaneers. So I'm really confused as to why they decided not to play him against the Giants yesterday. Like I said, not only is he showing promises and flashes as an edge rusher, but as worst case scenario, especially with Ricky Jordan-McGee still hurt, he's at worst probably your third best off-ball linebacker right now. It's Bobby Wagner, Frankie Louvu, and then Jamin Davis. Any better than anybody else you would probably throw out there, a off-ball linebacker that we have on roster right now. So I'm not getting it. But at the same time, shouts out to the Giants for watching tape against us and preparing the right game plan for us, executing it and all of that type of stuff, because these 2024 Commanders coaches, they've been coaching our defensive line to get up the field at all costs, man, which is why we wanted, this is what we wanted as fans, especially after the way Sam Mills III had them playing the complete opposite way, with just standing there taking up space, kind of like Alabama and Georgia defensive linemen do a lot of the time. But since teams know that we are doing that, and now this year, under this new scheme, we're asking for our defensive linemen to shoot up the gaps and come screaming up the gaps immediately, they're basically just double teaming them, or really just allowing the defensive lineman to attack the wrong gap. Just have fun. You think you're doing a good job. You think you got penetration on your own, but we basically allowed it type of situation. And they're kind of just ignoring them and letting them scream up the field all they want. And basically, they're just taking themselves out of the play. That's really what's happening right now. You can tell the Giants knew that coming into the game, and they schemed up against it. And I'm not mad at it, but we got to adjust. And I'm also not going to lie. Johnny Newton made his NFL debut against the Giants, but I forgot he was even on the field. He played 12 snaps yesterday, and I did not notice him at all on any of them. Not one play made, but at the same time, Deron Payne played 41 snaps, didn't record a single tackle. Jonathan Allen played 41 snaps as well, only recorded 2 tackles. So I didn't really notice those guys much either as well, and they played more than triple the snaps that Johnny Newton played. And I already know that it doesn't tell the whole story when you're just looking at surface stats like that. Definitely got to look at the advanced stat to see like pressure or pass rush win rate for those guys. But from what I saw live and even just looking at a replay of the highlights, that was not a good game from the defensive line at all. Now, linebacker wise, Bobby Wagner definitely looked better this week than last week. Still looked lost sometimes, like that one touchdown where the Giants had a bunch formation to the left that we talked about earlier, and then the receiver was wide open. Jeremy Chin wasn't covering anybody. It looked like Bobby Wagner was more so focused on stopping Daniel Jones. Maybe Joe Witt Jr. asked him to do a QB spy, but either way, I wish he would have just backed up like 2-3 yards, because he probably could have even had an interception on that throw if he just backed up a little bit. But outside of that, I felt like he was great against the run, and he also had some notable plays in coverage. Like, he had a big time pass breakup. It was one situation, one moment in the game where Bobby Wagner had a really good pass breakup, and then Benjamin St-Juste had one right after that. And I believe that was the first time we forced the Giants to punt, or at least the second time, one of 2 times that we ever forced them to punt that entire game. And even though he only had 5 solo tackles and 9 total, which is pretty low for his standards, it seemed like almost all of his tackles had big impacts on the game, man. It just felt like all of his just came in at the right time. But even as good as a game as Bobby Wagner had, I could argue that Frankie Louvu had an even better game. Now, not necessarily as a coverage guy. We don't really ask him to do that much. But against the run and causing havoc in the box, even against offensive linemen, trying to blitz and things like that, you can argue that Frankie Louvu was our most physical player all game, man. All game. That guy was all over the place. First of all, he led our team in tackles with 11, and he was just a heat-seeking missile every tackle that he had, man. It looked like he approached every tackle with terrible intentions, man. Even in the first quarter, when Malik Neighbors caught that ball and ran for a bunch of yards, Frankie Louvu hustled down the field to catch up with him and then laid a huge hit on him, which led to him having to go to the blue tent, man. Frankie Louvu was not playing out there. And then that's really it as far as linebackers go. I don't think any other linebacker played today. I think, yeah, Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu are our only linebackers that played. Dominique Hampton is inactive going into games. Jordan McGee, the rookie, is still hurt right now on short-term IR. And again, Jamin Davis, for some reason, was inactive this game. We only go into these games with 2 linebackers. I guess Nick Bellore, as a Pro Bowl special teamer, technically is a linebacker, but he never played a snap on defense, and thank goodness. We only played 2 linebackers all game on defense. I mean, Bobby Wagner played every defensive snap with 56, and Frankie Louvu only came out of the game for 1 snap. He played 55 defensive snaps, and I'm pretty sure that was a situation where we just brought more DBs on the field, because again, no other linebacker ever played. Now moving on to the cornerbacks and Michael Davis, and I'm not gonna lie, it's crazy because he started the game good with good coverage. I'm not gonna lie, I started to get excited, like, okay, maybe Michael Davis is showing us what he looked like 2 years ago with the Chargers. And then it just went downhill after that, man. He was getting cooked by Malik Neighbors, man. Now granted, everybody was kind of getting cooked by Malik Neighbors, but you know, at least occasionally at times. But he was getting cooked the worst compared to St-Juste and Noah Igbenogany. At least Noah had tighter coverage while getting beat, and he even had a pass interference penalty, but at least he was there. And then St-Juste actually won a couple of battles against Malik Neighbors where he had pass defenses and things like that. But Michael Davis was not only allowing catches, but also missing tackles on him, on Malik Neighbors, especially after he caught the ball. He even had that one drive where it happened almost back to back, the same exact way with only like 2 plays in between, where like Malik Neighbors runs this little curl route on the right side of the field, and then he starts spinning his body to the outside right after he catches the ball to break the tackle and get a bunch of yards after the catch. I mean, it just looked like Madden spam. They knew it could work. It worked the first time. Why not try it again a couple of plays later? And Michael Davis, I mean, it looked like deja vu how exactly the same it looked, man. You got to do better. And it reminds me that it is still crazy that Michael Davis was our biggest outside corner signing of free agency. And for those of y'all that have been blaming Forbes for everything, now you see why he's still been playing. Because it can always be worse. The grass is always green on the other side, ain't it? You also now see why Michael Davis didn't play a single snap against the Buccaneers in week 1, which I did question. Even while Emmanuel Forbes was struggling in that game, they still refused to play Michael Davis, and now you see why you can't blame Forbes for this game, huh? Can you? You just can't. He didn't even play. And then shouts out to my boy RVA Point of View for this meme that he made right here, this picture. I love this. Again, shouts out to my boy at RVA Point of Views on Twitter for this one. I thought this one was hilarious because it does basically seem like the same thing. We signed William Jackson thinking he could do something. We signed Michael Davis thinking he could do something. It didn't work out at all, especially hasn't worked out so far for Michael Davis at all. There's a reason Benjamin St-Juste, Noah Igbenogany, and Emmanuel Forbes are above him on the depth chart right now. Now moving on, for the positives when the cornerback groups, St-Juste played pretty well, all things considered, man. I mean, it wasn't perfect, but it looked like the St-Juste we had in 2022, especially at times. He was one of only 3 defensive players to play every defensive snaps. That man never came off the field. He was the only corner to play every defensive snap. And to put it into perspective, St-Juste played in all 56 defensive snaps. Mike Sanderstill was the corner that played the next most snaps with only 39, 17 less. And then Noah with 33, and then Michael Davis with 23. And you could tell at a certain point, it seemed like Michael Davis just basically got benched. And they had basically seen enough. I mean, poor Dan Quinn even said after the game, in his press conference after the game, that he doesn't even know what they're going to do at corner right now. Like, undecided, that was the exact word he used. They are lost with the dude with corner right now. Right now, corner is clearly our weakest position group, especially with even Sanderstill looking like a rookie out there getting beat. But at least St-Juste looks like a solid player long term for us in this defensive scheme. That forced fumble was a game changer too, man. We needed that. We probably, more than likely, do not win the game without that forced fumble. Because not only do we get the ball back to score a field goal right after that, but again, that drive, we couldn't stop the Giants to save our lives. Outside of the sack and the fumble, they got a first down on every play that they called, whether it be through the air or on the ground. It was crazy, man. That was scary. I mean, we literally couldn't stop anything that drive. And I hate the fact that some people are trying to say that the forced fumble was some type of like luck or anything like that. They're completely wrong, because he completely earned that forced fumble. He even admitted it himself. He said that that forced fumble happened because he made a mistake. He lost contain, and that's why the running back was even able to get all of those yards. So what he did was he decided to hustle down the field. Instead of feeling bad for himself, feeling sorry for himself, he hustled down the field and more than made up for it by forcing a fumble. I love that type of mentality from Benjamin St-Juste. Make a mistake, go make up for it right now. Don't complain, don't sulk, go make up for it right now. Shouts out to Benjamin St-Juste because he had 6 tackles, 3 passes broken up, and a forced fumble on the day. He played well. And then, of course, Mike Sanderstill wise, he didn't really have a good game. Most notably, that one time that Wan'Dale Robinson, he beat him for an out route for a 7-yard touchdown. I'm not exactly sure why Mike Sanderstill was playing on the inside leverage there and giving him basically the whole outside of the end zone with no help at all. But it was an easy touchdown for the Giants. And I don't know if that's a scheme thing or if it's Mike Sanderstill's, probably a mix of both. But Mike Sanderstill, so far, compared to the expectations that I had and from what I was seeing in the preseason, he has been pretty disappointing. He hasn't been just awful. Don't get me wrong. He hasn't just been like terrible, but he definitely hasn't been as good as I hope coming out. And what's even crazier, on that play where Mike Sanderstill had that touchdown scored against them, and this is why you can, somewhat place the blame on other people and not just Mike Sanderstill alone, because the Commanders sent 8 people at Daniel Jones on that play, and he still had plenty of time to throw that ball with no worries at all. And that's shameful on the front 7 of our defense, man. But at the same time, still bad coverage by Mike Sanderstill. I can admit that. But you also have to admit that that's a very difficult position to be in, one-on-one on a complete island, no safety help, and you sent 8 defenders at Daniel Jones and nobody got there. But that's what Joe Witt Jr. wants to eventually be able to do with his defense. Leave guys on the island like that. Be aggressive. Send a bunch of pressure at the quarterback and things like that randomly to catch them off guard. That's what they want to do. You could just tell by the coverage that we had in that game against the Giants. We just cannot do that yet, and that's why they eventually switched to zone. Now, safety-wise, Jeremy Chin, I'm looking dead at you, man. You have been one of my biggest disappointments so far this season. I still believe in your talent and potential, but dog, your run fits have been terrible. Your tackling, you've been missing a lot of tackles. That's been terrible. Shouts out to him for recovering that fumble that was punched out by Benjamin St-Juste. But even on that play, if you really look at it, he was missing the tackle on Singletary on that play right there on the running back. He was like literally missing the tackle, and then Benjamin St-Juste poked the ball out, and then he was there to recover it because he was already down on the ground, basically. So I still, again, have high expectations for Jeremy Chinn. I haven't given up on him, but you just got to play better. You have not been great. And then shouts out to my boy Tyler Owens, because that big hit he had to start the second half, man, I thought our defense was going to feed off of that with some energy and come out balling on defense, but they didn't. They really didn't. But either way, Tyler Owens, that was really his only notable play. I don't believe he ever played on actual defense, only on special teams, and that hit was a big one, and that's why he's on this team right now as he develops and works on his game as a safety so he can start playing on defense eventually. And from what I noticed, Percy Butler made some big-time tackles for us, man, in that game. He was a really good tackler. He was one of the only consistent tacklers that I can really think of, especially out of the secondary group. Didn't really notice what he did well or poorly in coverage, though, but tackling-wise, he stepped up and made some nice tackles for us. But that's, I mean, really any time in the secondary, you really got to look at the all 22 to get the full picture. And then Quan Martin, his situation was interesting because he was hurt coming into this game, but somehow he ended up playing more snaps than anybody else in the secondary other than Jeremy Chinn. Jeremy Chinn played in every single defensive snap, all 56 of them, and Quan Martin only played in 3 less snaps, but I didn't really notice him out there for real, and maybe that's a good thing because I definitely noticed him making some bad plays against the Buccaneers last week, so maybe it's a good thing that we didn't notice him. Maybe he was doing a good job in coverage, I don't know, but I didn't really notice him, so I'm gonna have to go look at the all 22 and really see what my boy Quan Martin did, because that's been my guy for forever. I mocked him to us a couple of mock drafts before that 2023 draft. I was one of the most excited people to get him, even though I thought we could get him in the 3rd round. To get him in the 2nd, I was still excited. So that's my guy. I've really been keeping track of him so far, and I gotta go look at the all 22 to see what my boy did. Now, special teams, man, and you know that kicker Austin CYBORG. I'm gonna call him CYBORG again, like I already said earlier. Austin CYBORG, it just rolls off the tongue perfectly, man. In his first game with the Commanders, not only did he hit the game-winning field goal, but he also set a new single-game franchise record for the Commanders with 7 made field goals in one game. And he broke the record at 6 too. Like, the record was broken at 6. He went and got him a 7th one. That man just wanted to make sure he had a comfortable lead just so that he could stay in the Commanders record books forever, because I don't think anybody's ever going to beat that. I really don't hope anybody ever really beats it. And even crazier, this was the first time that a Commanders kicker had at least 3 made field goals in a game since Joey Sly in week 11 of the 2022 season. So it's been almost basically like 2 years since anybody's even made 3 field goals in a game for us. And that boy Austin CYBORG made 7. 7 for 7, man. And shouts out to Austin CYBORG because he saved the ownership from embarrassment in that home opener, man. To lose to the Giants, especially the way that it looked like we would have potentially lost in the home opener with all of those fans there, everybody there. Jayden Daniels, his mom, everybody was there, man. And I mean, shouts out to Austin CYBORG for that, man, because that's a completely different narrative if we don't win that game. They may need to go ahead and just build him a statue for what he did, because he won us our Northwest Stadium debut. Hopefully that's some good fortune moving forward. We won the first game we ever played with Northwest Stadium. We also brought the gold pants back for the first time in a few years. Maybe that contributed to it as well, but either way, I'm gonna give Austin CYBORG a lot of the credit. And just in case, if you wanted to relive the moment, if you weren't there at the game to actually see how the fans reacted to that game-winning kick, here's Chad Ricardo on Twitter at Chad Ricardo for this moment right here. Again, shouts out to Chad Ricardo for that footage. And then, on top of all of that, after going 7 of 7 on field goals for the day, he showed up to his post-game press conference wearing a Death Row Records shirt, man. I mean, first of all, why did he even already have that ready? Like, how did he know he was going to have that type of game and even wear a shirt like that? But I just need to, all that's left for me is to see Austin CYBORG make kicks from the 50s to solidify it. If he can make 50-yarders, we're good to go. He's our franchise kicker right then and there. But with as well as the offense moves the ball and converts on third downs right now, maybe we won't see him ever even attempt a 50-plus yarder anytime soon. And that's a great thing if that does happen. He just never even has to kick a 50-plus yarder. But me personally, before I crown him as a franchise kicker, I'm sorry, but I got to see him make some big boy kicks. But as far as being consistent, he aced the test with flying colors there. We have our guy. Is anything 45 yards and shorter, we have the guy that we've been looking for. Also, something that I really, really want to point out to y'all is imagine if we had Cameron Cheeseman still as our long snapper, man. We missed at least one of those field goals, because I was saying it when we had Joey Slye last year, that Joey Slye was not the problem, man. We were missing a lot of those kicks because of Cameron Cheeseman's bad long snapping. So just imagine if we had Cameron Cheeseman right now, we probably don't win that game. We at least miss one of those kicks because of the bad timing, the bad aim from the long snapper. So shouts out to Adam Peters for finding a dependable long snapper and a potentially franchise kicker all in one offseason. I mean, especially the kicker one, having to go through 4 kickers just this offseason alone. Technically 5 if you want to include Joey Slye, who was on the roster back in January before Adam Peters officially took the job as the general manager. I mean, and also, maybe we even potentially found a franchise quarterback and potentially a franchise left tackle who did struggle, and maybe even a wide receiver too in free agency. But my main point is that combination of Tyler Ott, Tress Way, and Austin CYBORG deserves a lot of credit for that game. Everybody had a part to play in that game, in him making those 7-for-7 kicks. It's not just the kicker himself. We got to get a long snapper and Tyler Ott and the placeholder and Tress Way a lot of credit for that. Also, another positive on the special team side, Olamide Zaccheaus did a great job of returning when he could. And I say when he could because the Giants only punted twice in that game. And on one of those punts, Zaccheaus made a few people miss to start the run, and then he broke a couple of tackles. But I went from hoping that he may return it for a touchdown to immediately praying that he just doesn't fumble. Just fall down. Just please please fall down real quick. You already had a good return. No use in risking a fumble to get a couple of extra yards. But man, it's definitely noteworthy that Zaccheaus is officially our starting punt returner. I don't think Jamison Crowder is hurt. They just decided Olamide is your better punt returner right now, or at the very least, between him and Jamison Crowder, if you're like doing a point system and you give points for who's the better receiver and points for who's the better punt returner, overall he has enough points for both to where I guess Jamison Crowder is expendable at this point. And then on kick returns, it's Olamide Zaccheaus and Austin Ekeler. So right now you can clearly see that Austin Ekeler is great at kick returns. He should have had one return for a touchdown. And I mean, he's so great at kick returns that he even caused the opposing team's kicker to get hurt on kick returns. But basically right now, your special teams returners are Olamide Zaccheaus and Austin Ekeler. Seems like Jamison Crowder, if they're ever looking for a roster spot to get rid of to bring on an additional player at another position group, it will probably just be on the lookout. Jamison Crowder is probably next in line to be cut. And then negative wise on the special teams thing, of course, obviously, dog, I gotta ask the question, why is the Pro Bowl special teamer that we recently signed out here selling us on special teams, dog? Nick Bellore had 2 penalties on special teams in that game, most notably the Austin Ekeler kick return for a touchdown that got brought back. And from what I remember, Bellore's penalty didn't even affect the play. It was just completely unnecessary. That guy is gone. We literally had to sign him right before the game, I think off the practice squad, to get him even able to play for this game. This is a guy that was barely on the roster as is. I'm pretty sure he's gone after this, unless they just saw something in him. I don't know, but that did not look good. Now, moving on, I have some conclusion thoughts moving on. First of all, I do want to point out the fact that NFL teams went 1,132-0 in NFL history when scoring 3 more touchdowns than their opponent. The New York Giants with 3 touchdowns ended that streak yesterday versus the Commanders, who had 0 touchdowns. And shouts out to Brian DeBall for breaking a streak. Now the NFL is 1,132-1 when having 3 more touchdowns than their opponent. That is a crazy stat, y'all. That is insane. Also, first of all, now getting to my thoughts, There's something about when we play the Giants in Maryland, in that stadium specifically, even though it has a different name and it has some upgraded features to it inside the stadium, around the stadium, and things like that, it's still the same stadium, man. Those games are always really weird and suspenseful, and this one definitely lived up to the hype, or honestly, lived down to the hype, like the lack of hype thereof, because, I mean, that wasn't like the best game ever. Shouts out to Michael Phillips. He brought up a great point. I agree. He said this game has lived down to expectations. This is the type of game you expect when you go into a Commanders versus Giants game, especially in Maryland. He also pointed out the fact that the Commanders and Giants, they make you buy the whole seat, but you only use the edge. I thought that was an hilarious way to word it too, because that was pretty much a nail biter the whole way through, man. It wasn't a great game. If I'm not a Commanders or Giants fan, that's not a good game to really watch outside of Jayden Daniels making some things shake with his legs and making some great throws. Outside of that, if you're not a Giants or Commanders fan, that game was pretty much unwatchable. But hey, a win is a win, and I know it's really annoying to go down to the wire with a team that's as bad as the Giants, but I truly believe that we are, right now, the worst versions of ourselves that we will be, not only this year, but really ever again for a long time. I think now is the time to catch us lacking while we deal with the growing pains of being the newest team in the NFL by far, top to bottom, front office, coaching staff, and roster, and arguably one of the newest teams going from one season to the next in NFL history. I mean, you better catch us now while we're still lacking a lot of nuance and chemistry, and before we start the game, all of that type of stuff. I would not be surprised at all if we go from struggling against the Giants week 2 at home to beating a good team like the Steelers in November. I wouldn't be surprised at all, because again, this is the worst we're going to be for, I think, in the Adam Peters era ever, as him being our general manager, man. Yeah, we still have a lot of issues to figure out, and we have a lot of holes to fill on this roster, but I'm very confident that we will get better and better every week. Again, even though it wasn't great overall, I pointed out throughout this video some of the minor improvements that we made in the secondary, overall defensively, definitely on the offensive side of the ball in a lot of different ways as well. And I'm not saying that we have the most talented roster in the NFL, but we are still doing the type of things wrong that only new teams do. Lots of self-inflicted mistakes, even beyond just the penalties and things like that. So I think, hey, man, I know it looks bad when you go to the wire with the Giants, but I'm telling you, this is the worst we'll be. That's my main message to the fan base right now leaving this game. Also, when you sit back and think about it, this game was really crazy because we went from having a touchdown on the opening kickoff to no touchdown all day. Like, how? I thought, based on what I was seeing in that opening kickoff, while Austin Eckler still had the ball in his hand and was running before I saw the flag, that we were about to come out and ball out. Like, we were about to score ridiculous amounts of points this game. But I guess it just ended up not happening. But I just thought it was crazy. I was reflecting after the game and like, wow, we went from an opening kickoff touchdown to no touchdowns all game. That's crazy. But also for me, my game balls will go to Jayden Daniels, Austin Eckler, Brian Robinson, Noah Brown in his debut for the Commanders, Zach Ertz, Austin CYBORG, and I honestly would throw Benjamin St. Juste in there as an honorable mention. And I think Wagner and Luvu played pretty well overall as well. So, man, I got to look at the All-22 to see if there's some other people that maybe I missed, or maybe some of the people I named had worse games than I thought, and I just got to really look at them. But live watching the game and then doing like a rewatch with the highlights, I feel like those are some of the guys that deserve a little bit of credit. Also, my last conclusion point before we get to some of the conclusions and game balls that other media members and Commanders analysts had to point out. So I'm gonna give them their shout outs when I give y'all their opinions as well. But before we move on, my main takeaway from this game is that Rivera's team would have lost this game last year. Like, we were not clutch last year at all. So stop the comparisons to the 2023 Commanders. I know things don't look as good as we want them to look right now, especially as soon as we hoped, but this is definitely a different team, man. Even from things as small as Cliff Kingsbury and Joe Wood Jr. making adjustments mid-game. And most importantly, making adjustments that actually worked, or at least helped, mid-game. Even things as little as what Logan Paulson pointed out after the Bucks game, that he could hear all of the secondary coaches collaborating on the sidelines to figure out the best way to adapt to what the Buccaneers receivers were doing in the passing game and things like that. Paulson said he never heard that coming from the sidelines last year, the entire season. There's just a different level of carrying on this team. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a different level of effort, and there's just like an unwillingness to just keep letting bad things happen to us, and there's just a thirst to get better from both the players and the coaches. So shouts out to Logan Paulson for pointing that out, and shouts out to Dan Quinn and Adam Peters for bringing a different mentality to this team. I'm really excited. It hasn't looked great yet, has not looked perfect at all, but you can at least tell they care. They care. There's adjustments mid-game. When was the last time we made adjustments with Rivera and Jack Del Rio, man? Or Eric Bieniemy? Now, let's move on to other people's reviews. We're going to fly through these. I just wanted to give y'all like a quick, some great points that other people's brought up, and I definitely don't want to like steal their credit or anything like that, so I'm gonna shout them out and I'm gonna read it bar for bar what they said. All of these are coming from Twitter too, so make sure you follow these guys. First of all, my boy Jamal at Let Martelli asked, one sentence takeaway from today's game, and at Rigo's Rag said relief. I completely agree 100%. That's the biggest. If I had to give one word for this game, relief or growth. Relief or growth. I'd probably, if I'm gonna give my own separate answer, I would say growth. And then at Burgundy Blog said, not a good team, obviously, but find a way is a crucial trait to develop, and I love that. We found a way to win this game again. That is the difference between this regime and the last regime. Also, shouts out to Grant Paulson for this one. Game Ball, Cybert, made all 7 field goal attempts. Daniels threw for 226 and ran for 44. Robinson, 133 rushing yards. Eckler, 85 combined yards. Ertz, leading receiver with 4 catches for 62 yards. Luvu, 11 tackles, and Farrell, 2nd sack in 2 games. Good point. Also, Pedro Smith, shouts out to him. Follow him on Twitter and subscribe to his YouTube. Game Balls, Austin Seibert, Brian Robinson, Zach Ertz, Frankie Luvu, and Noah Brown. I agree. I would just add a couple of more names in there. Then you have my boy at Commanders Realm on Twitter. Thoughts from today's win against the Giants. Again, I'm doing this video the day after. I'm sorry I've been so busy. I forgot to apologize at the beginning of the video. Been super busy and all of that type of stuff. But now I'm officially coming with my game review. I typically do it right after the game, but we did the call-in show, and then it just took me a little while to finally get this video done. But either way, Commanders Realm said Jayden Daniels continues to find ways to move the team down the field after another 0 turnover game. That's very noteworthy. Offensive line plays well when they don't false start. I agree for the most part. There were times in pass protection that they were pretty bad, but overall, it does feel better than last year what Sam Howell had to deal with. So shouts out to this offensive line for at least being a little bit better so far. And they're only going to get better throughout the season like the last year's offensive line did. Eckler and Robinson are in discussion for the best 1-2 running back punch in the league. I agree. Pre-snap substitution, snap count, everything you need to know before the snap needs to be improved. There were 5 million screen passes. Yeah, that was crazy. St. Jude still sucks. I disagree with that one, though. Noah Brown is my hero. That's funny. Ertz may be old, but he's efficient and good for Daniels. Some huge catches. I agree. They had absolutely no interior pressure from the big money defensive tackles Jones had all day. I agree. Daniels is an impressive runner, but they need to allow him to throw a tad bit more, especially in the red zone, and that's a point for the Giants. I kind of agree there as well. Austin Seibert for president. Again, I'm calling him Austin CYBORG. And Washington sits atop the NFC East. Hopefully Atlanta can complete the trifecta tomorrow. Let's get it. Also moving on, my boy Mark Tyler said wide receivers next week need to be Terry McLaurin at the X, Noah Brown at the Z, and Luke McCaffrey at the Y, the slot, and that's it. Zacchaeus and Brown can fight it out for wide receiver 4 or 5 for all we care, but those are your 3 guys moving forward, point blank period. And I predicted that that's how it would look before the Giants game even happened, and I walked away feeling the exact same way. Also, shouts out to my boy Rich Manuel because he brings up a pretty harsh point, but a really good point at the same time. A lot of teams in their playoff list seasons justifying that at least they move the ball well. What separates the best teams from the also-rans is that they get the job done, especially in the red zone, so we got to improve there. I completely agree. Also, shouts out to Grant Paulson for this one. He said, I think we started to see the identity the Commanders are going for. Their best path forward is to be a heavy run outfit that shortens passing games, that shortens games and tries to dominate time of possession. Robinson, Daniels, Eckler combined for 215 yards rushing, and Washington won the time of possession battle by 15 minutes. I agree. That probably is our identity, at least for now moving forward. Maybe when Jayden Daniels learns to, he starts to become more of what he was in that second half, maybe then we can start to open up the passing game and be a more explosive offense. But right now, heavy run, dominate time of possession. Defense just got to learn how to get off the field a little bit sooner and a little bit better more often. And we can make that work, man. We can win some games we're not supposed to win because of that. Also, shouts out to my boy at Bleeding Burgundy and Gold. He said, no punts and no turnovers are going to keep you in most games. That Giants fumble was literally the difference today. I completely agree. Also, shouts out to my boy Kyronism from the stream. Shouts out to him because he pointed out the fact, he said that the Commanders fans were still cheering at the stadium for like another hour after the game ended. It was basically a celebration in Landover, man, and I love it. And like I mentioned before, I love how happy the crowd was to see that the Saints were whooping the Cowboys when they showed that score on the Jumbotron, man. Before we even won the game, I think, again, like I said earlier, I think we were losing against the Giants at the time they showed that game, and the crowd still found the energy to explode in excitement off of the fact that the Cowboys were losing. And then again, after the game, sounds like people were celebrating for like a whole hour after the game. I'll take it, man. Also, shouts out to my boy at Commanders Realm. This is the last outside opinion and note that I'm gonna bring to attention. He said, I was at the game today. Most packed I've seen it in years, even more so than the opener last year. Good amount of Giants fans, but not the invasion of the past. Very important for this regime and quarterback to win their first home game. I completely agree. There's multiple things to take away from that. First of all, this is probably one of the first times it's felt like an actual home environment where we outnumbered the opposing team at a home game for the first time in so many years. And even just beyond that, the fact that he pointed, I agree that it was really important to get this win, no matter how we got it, to get this win, to keep hope alive in the fan base so that the next home game that we have, they show out in drones and dominate and we have a home field advantage again. Because once you start losing, or if you start, I'm not even gonna speak into existence, if you start losing, that's where fans stop showing up to the games as deep, and that's when we start to lose home field advantage. And when you lose home field advantage, it leads to more losing. It makes it more difficult for your team to win. So the more we win, the more the fans pull up. The more the fans pull up, the more we win. It's the egg, it's the chicken or the egg situation. Now moving on, I have a few last random notes I want to point out before we get up out of here. Before we go, did y'all see how upset Brian DeBall was after we made the game-winning kick? I literally laughed out loud when I saw it, man. Y'all got to see it if you haven't, because there's like a slow motion clip of us celebrating with Austin CYBORG where they had him up like how you see behind me in my background right now, and then the camera cuts immediately from us celebrating with Austin CYBORG to Dayball slamming stuff to the ground in slow motion. I mean, the contrast was crazy, but hilarious, man. Also, shouts out to the Bucs for beating the Lions. I told y'all it was a great team that we lost to in week 1. Doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, we're good though, because when you're going against the Giants and you're going down to the wire and things like that, you know, it's not a good look. But at least we know that the Bucs are a serious team this year, man, 2-0. And also, I want to point out the fact that we have a better team, that we are better than the team up the road right now, record-wise at least, the Baltimore Ravens. I wouldn't say we are the better team, obviously not, but we at least got off to a better start. We are 1-1. The Baltimore Ravens are 0-2, even though they have played against pretty good opponents, especially week 1. And then also, shouts out to Jayden Daniels and Malik Neighbors, because of course, they did a jersey swap at the end of the game, and I love that bond between the two, and both of them showed out. So I know they're both probably talking trash to each other, but they're both acknowledging the fact that Jayden Daniels had a great game and Malik Neighbors was killing our defense. So that's much love and mutual respect from those two close friends. You even saw not only just before the game, but even during the game, at some point during like a timeout, they were like dapping each other up and talking to each other and everything like that. They still have a lot of love for each other. I prefer if they were more like Russell Westbrook, where no matter how close of a friend you are, during the game, we are mortal enemies. I hate you. But that's cool though. I still like the fact that they have a strong friendship right there. And that's going, those are, I mean, right there, I mean, with that jersey swap, those are two players that are going to be causing, I mean, just giving everybody headaches in this league for years to come. Jayden Daniels at quarterback, Malik Neighbors at wide receiver. Those are going to be two of your top offensive players in the NFL for the future, and they're going to have commercials, they're going to have advertisement sponsors, all type of stuff. So we're seeing the beginnings of it, but trust me, those are going to be two dogs in this NFL for a long time to come, man. Also, before we go, a random stat that I just saw: Cliff Kingsbury through the first 2 weeks, EPA per play 4th, success rate 5th, drop back EPA 6th, drop back SR 4th, and rush EPA 4th. So while everybody's complaining about Cliff Kingsbury, he seems to be at least a top 5 play caller in the NFL right now. But of course, we got to become more efficient in the red zone. I understand the complaints, but everything else, Cliff Kingsbury has been cooking, man. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release the informative and opinionated video just like this one. Again, I'm sorry I'm so late coming out with my game review video. I wasn't able to do it last night, but I appreciate y'all being patient with me. As of right now, this video is like, what, an hour and 37 minutes long. It's 5:48 p.m. I don't know by the time y'all get it, it'll probably be like 6 or 7, but hey, man, I appreciate y'all being patient with me, staying along and waiting for me to come out with my review video. Really appreciate y'all. Make sure you please leave a like on the way out if you appreciate all of the hard work and notes that I put in behind this and the film study that I put into this video. Please make sure you do not leave this video without leaving a like, and of course let me know in the comment section how you feel about this game, especially after having a night to rest on it and think about it, to process everything. How do you feel about this game? Do you agree or disagree with any of my points, and any points that you have outside of the ones that I made? Please let me know, because literally one of the main reasons I made this YouTube channel was to become a better fan, to be like a place, like a safe haven for everybody to basically give their own opinions. That's why I do the call-in shows, and a lot of the times y'all have points that I never thought of. Sometimes I'm wrong and y'all bring up points that are right, and I'm like, oh yeah, you're right, and that makes me a smarter fan. So let me know y'all exact opinions in the comment section. Let me know if I'm wrong about anything, if I'm right about anything and you agree. Let me know why on every point that you have as well. That, you know, show me your work, like they used to say in school, man. Don't just tell me your opinion, tell me why you have that opinion based on for what play and things like that, stats or whatever. I'd really appreciate it. And of course, I really appreciate y'all. I'm gonna coming with daily videos every day. Make sure y'all stay tuned. I will be live streaming that Bengals game Monday night. Of course, I'm gonna at some point this week come out with a preview video to give y'all everything which y'all need to watch for and expect, matchups, weaknesses, and strengths of the Bengals and things like that before that game as well. That'll probably be Wednesday or Thursday, so stay tuned for that. I really appreciate y'all. I'm gonna catch y'all later. I'm out.